Good evening and welcome to this 5:30 regularly scheduled meeting of the Brookline Select Board. I have the privilege tonight of serving as Chairman Pro Tem for a very brief period at the board's first meeting after the resignation of Heather Hamilton as the board's chair. We thank her for her service. I would note that we continue a longstanding tradition in Brookline. These cards were first written by our first town administrator, Dick Leary, in the 1980s. And we continue to follow that tradition in the event of a reorganization of the board. So I'd first like to call this meeting to order and direct your attention to the first item on the agenda, which calls for the board to organize with the election of a new chair. So nominations are in order to fill the term, remainder of the term vacated by Heather Hamilton. No seconds are required. Do we have any nominations for the position of chair? Mr. Van Scoyac.
Thank you very much. It is with great pleasure that I nominate my colleague Bernard Green to be chair.
In that case, I can put my hand down.
Are there any further nominations? There being none, is there a motion that nominations be closed?
So move.
I have a second.
Second.
Okay, I will now take the vote on the motion that nominations be closed. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say no. Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Van Scoyac?
Aye.
Ms. Ashkenazi?
Aye.
Mr. Sandman?
Aye.
Nominations are closed. It has been moved that Bernard Green be elected chair of the select board for the remainder of the term vacated by Heather Hamilton. I will now call the roll. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Van Scoyac?
Aye.
Ms. Ashkenazi?
Aye.
Mr. Sandman?
Aye.
Motion is carried by a vote of 4-0. Congratulations, Mr. Green. Welcome back
Thank
to
you.
the chair. You may assume it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay. First, I'd like to thank my colleagues on the select board for this opportunity to again serve as chair. As town administrator said, this is a temporary position until the May elections, at which time the full select board will elect a chair. I think it's important to also say that the role of the select board chair is mainly just to keep the board organized. I mean, there's really no power other than the power to have the first crack at the agenda. And that's a little significant, but it's important to realize that the select board operates as a unit, and we try to be as unified as possible on the things that come before us. So with that, let's start with announcements and updates. And I'd like to start myself before I call on other select board members, if that's okay. Donnell O'Neill, who's in the audience at a select board meeting on January 24th, suggested that we start off this year's Black History Month at the select board with reading the names of the people that we are aware of that were Brookline residents and enslaved either as chattel slaves or subject to indentures. And their names are, and I'm going to read them off. And there are quite a few, so bear with me. 84 people. Aki, Adam, Ben Boston, Boston, Bung, Caesar, Charles, Cuff, Cuffy, Ditto, Dinah, Exeter, Felix, Flora, George, Great George, Hagar, Hawkins, Jack, Jackie, Jane, Jenny, Jeremy, Jethro, John, Indian, Kate, Catherine, Cuff, Kent, Lemon, Margaret, Maul, Pamela, Peter, Phyllis, Pompey, Primus, Prince, Waco, Rebe, Rose, Sambo, Seco, Titus, Toby, Tunaquin, Venus, Violet, Warwick, William, and 18 people whose owners listed them in documents simply as Negro. So let me just add that in addition to knowing their names, I hope that local historians and others try to find some information on their lives so that we know them as real human beings, not just as objects of oppression. Seeking, we should find out what their lives are like so we can get a sense of how they, under very difficult circumstances, sought to seek the best life that they could. These are people who struggle many times just like we struggle, and we should know them in terms of the details of their lives and how they really made their lives of human beings with families and futures that may not have been that great, but still were futures that they needed to strive towards achieving as best they could. So, any other announcements from the select board? Mr. Enskoya. Oh, I'm
I have
sorry.
I have my hand up too.
Yeah.
John can go first.
Thanks, Miriam. I just want to make note of the fact that we did have a fire in Brookline this past week. Unfortunately, it was at one of our restaurants on Beacon Street, and the fire department responded as we always expect that they will, speedily and with expertise and with the kind of experience and knowledge and commitment that I think made a big difference in the outcome. They were able to deal with not just the extinguishing of the fire, but also the impact it had on some apartments, some units that were above the restaurant that needed to be, in some cases, vacated for the safety of the occupants. So I want to just commend the fire department on this occasion for the kind of response that we in Brookline have. I hope we never take it for granted, but it does, in fact, time after time after time, prove to be the case that when they are called upon in time of need, they respond above and beyond. So thank you to all of the firefighters who responded in that situation.
Miriam.
I think we may have lost Miriam briefly.
Okay, let's come back to her hopefully soon. Mike.
Yeah, Bernard, thank you for reading that list. And the thing that strikes me is the names, those names were, in a sense, they stripped away the real identity of the person, and it's so important to try, as you said, to remember what they and find out what they actually did in life, and restore, in retrospect, in some way, restore that humanity. List of first names is really pretty scary when you think about what they really mean when they were only first names.
Yes, thank you. Miriam, we lost you for a second, so you're back.
Yes, I'm on a different Wi-Fi now, so I hope it works a little better. Thank you. Thank you for that, Bernard. I want to talk about something totally different, which is applications closed today for the second round of ARPA funding. And the ARPA Review Committee will be meeting Friday, February 17th at 2 p.m. to 3:30 to start discussing the new round of grants. And I would highly encourage the public to join us. All the meetings are recorded and they're posted, but we love to have you, and there's always an opportunity for comment at the end. We have outlined the entire meeting schedule, should be on our website, including a meeting allocated solely for public input once we get near a final slate. So please do join us. We are spending a lot less this time around, so it might not be as exciting, but we hope to have a really interesting array of grants to fund. Thank you. Also, I apologize, but I will be leaving shortly. It is curriculum night at the high school, and I have an incoming ninth grader. So here I am.
Well, we can appreciate the need for you to be there. It's very important. So any other select board members like to add anything? No? So let's start with or go to public comment. John, would you like to set out the rules?
Yes, I'd be happy to do it. Thank you for joining us for public comment, an opportunity for us to hear your perspective on the issues in Brookline that matter to you. We do have a few rules, and I will share them. Each person speaking tonight is limited to 3 minutes. You don't need to use the entire time. You may if you like. Please refrain from personal attacks, refrain from addressing personnel issues during your comments. Members of the public sometimes raise questions, and we may be able to provide a quick answer, but we are more likely to work with staff to get a more thorough answer and respond over email. We'll let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining and when your time is up. Please conclude your remarks at that time. If you have more to say, you're welcome to send an email to board members. And Devin, who is first on our list?
The first person signed up for public comment is Janelle O'Neill. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Donald O'Neill, town meeting member from precinct 4, also on the advisory committee. I just want to say, Bernard, thank you for reading the names. It was different hearing the names come out of your mouth, me not reading them this time. It was I don't know, kind of hit me a little bit more, kind of like what Uncle Mike was saying. Kind of hit me a little bit more. So the hidden Brookline, I think that there's a committee, John, if I'm not mistaken, right? The hidden Brookline, I think it's a committee that we have.
Yes.
Like I want everyone to Google hidden Brookline. There's a lot of interesting things on that site that explain how deep it gets with Brookline in regards to money over people and people over money, and just where we are today and how we still to this day, that the delay still exists, from equity to protection to even just living as a human being. So Bernard, thank you again for reading the names. You know, as with everything going on in this world, you know, change starts at home. And I appreciate the select board members. I appreciate everyone who serves and puts their time and volunteer hours into trying to make Brookline a place for everyone. And you know, we have a long ways to go on achieving that goal. But it starts here in Brookline. I just want to thank everyone here in this room and on the screen over there. Thank you for your volunteer time. Thank you for putting in the service and trying to make change and helping with change. Like, we have a lot to do. Chaz, I'm so excited you're here. Your energy is.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you, Devin. And so just thank you. We have a lot to do, and I appreciate just the effort so far. And I pray the energy continues. Okay, thank you.
The next person signed up for public comment is David Gladstone. You've been promoted to a panelist. Your 3 minutes will begin when you're ready.
Thanks, Devin. Bernard Green, first of all, welcome back to the chair. I too was in awe of the names that were given to these slaves or indentured servants with regards to their identities being stripped, and I appreciate you educating me on that tonight. I'd also like to compliment you on being involved with the disenfranchised businesses that we actually met as a group with the Brookline Community Development Corporation. Thank you for helping with that as well. Okay, down to business. Good evening. My name is David Gladstone, longtime resident of Precinct 16, South Brookline, member of the Small Business Development Committee, and president of the Brookline Chamber of Commerce. Brookline Day at Coolidge Corner was a resounding success and a major win for residents and businesses alike. I worked the day for both Brookline Bank and the Chamber, I was also able to walk around and see the exhibits and the businesses in Coolidge Corner. I first want to thank the entire town and the related departments for their incredible support and execution of Brookline Day at Coolidge Corner. Captain Lee Jackson from Recreation helped to plan and execute the day. As I stated previously, it was successful in all ways. I'm now talking as the president of the Chamber of Commerce. I encourage the town and the select board to seriously consider repeating the event in Coolidge Corner and possibly thinking about adding another business district such as the Village. As a business banker, I can tell you that our businesses still need our support, and to be able to drive Brookline Day-like traffic to our districts would be helpful and beneficial to our businesses. Thank you very much.
The next person signed up for public comment is Marty Rosenthal. You've been promoted to a panelist. Your 3 minutes will begin when you're ready.
Am I in?
You are.
Guess so. Thank you very much. And my congrats also to Bernard. It's Marty Rosenthal, town meeting member, precinct 9, former select board member, and speaking at least on his first issue for Brookline PACs. The number 11, the police complaint policy changes are fine. I hope they'll adopt them. And as I've urged PCAC, which was proposed by the Police Reform Committee, which I was on, the select board should also, as soon as possible, join me in urging number 1, explicit interweaving of the diversity officer's role as ongoing complainants liaison, another significant proposal from the Reform Committee. And number 2, ad nauseum resolving the jurisdictional overlap and differences of the police complaint policies and the human resources, just as town meeting did with Article 31 recently. For example, where does a profiling complaint go? And number 3, I'm adding something that I haven't mentioned for a while. As PACs and town meeting urged in 2009, it should take less than a board majority to grant a complainant a formal appeal hearing, and town meeting adopted that as a resolution, unsuccessfully though. And then secondly, on Article 6, the form-based zoning, and not yet discussed by PACS's board, I've generally supported more density on major corridors for affordable housing, but I now join a steadily developing groundswell with serious questions about this proposal all along Harvard Street. Number 1, this is a seismic shift for our community, especially 6 of 17 precincts, isn't it? We need clearer answers on many doubts, like for this very dense area, why not other areas like Boylston Street or even Washington Square or parts of Beacon Street? What is the alleged, quote, contiguous criterion? Can't it be modified for an applicant? If not, it seems arbitrary and capricious, if not downright idiotic. What impacts are projected for new residents, the free schools populations, dozens of treasured local businesses, and I hope Ms. Gladstone's still here, and tax revenues? Next, isn't form-based zoning really merely a technocratic and subjective aesthetics siren song soundbite that ignores global questions like those that I've mentioned?
You have
And what
30
is the
seconds.
actual penalty amount if we delay to far better deliberate? We need not only answers, but good ones sooner, not later. It's well worth it, including to our taxpayers, to pay in order to drastically decelerate and discuss this train. Thanks a lot, and I hope you'll later address my concerns.
The next person signed up for public comment is David Lashinsky. You've been promoted to a panelist. You can unmute and share your video if you're comfortable. Your 3 minutes will begin.
Okay, can everybody see me?
Yes.
Great. Chairman Green, Select Board, all the members, thank you very much that are present. Thank you very much for allowing me to make a couple of public comments. I understand that there will be a discussion later regarding Brookline Day. I wanted to tell you from the merchant perspective, the attendance was phenomenal. There were many people walking around. It's something that allowed people that had not been to Coolidge Corner to come to Coolidge Corner. It has illustrated once again how important it is to have events that are town sponsored, that really encourage the residents to taste the exceptional things that we have here. So I just wanted to urge that when it comes to a discussion or thoughts about this, to say that, or to realize that, yes, this is something that the merchants as well as the residents found valuable, and we would like it to continue. Thank you.
At this time, there are 21 attendees virtually and 1 in person. No one is using the hand raise or Q&A feature to indicate they'd like to make a comment.
Okay, thank you, Devin. Next, let's move on to miscellaneous items. We do not have minutes for January 31st ready yet, so we'll skip that. And item 4D is the question of approving a proclamation recognizing National Black History Month. If other members of the select board don't mind, I'd actually like to read that. So let's vote on 4B, C, B, and C. Question of approving the authorization to hire requests for a pipe laborer in the Water and Sewer Division of the Department of Public Works. And 4C, question of approving change order number 8 with Lambrian Construction in the amount of $20,006 for work related to the BHS quad and 3rd floor classrooms renovation project. Any questions from the board? Okay, let's vote all in favor of items 4B and 4C. Please indicate by saying aye. So who's the first person I call? Okay.
You're looking at him.
John.
Aye.
Miriam.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Next item is the proclamation recognizing National Black History Month here in Brookline. And it's not really long, but it's a little long. And I'd like to read it because I want people to really get a sense of the history of this month, its significance nationally and really internationally. It's celebrated not necessarily in February, but in October in Great Britain and Ireland, and also in February in Canada. So anyway, before we vote, I'd like to just read the proclamation. Proclamation of the Brookline, Massachusetts Select Board recognizing National Black History Month. Brookline Select Board believes that there is no accurate American history that does not include the history of Black Americans. And whereas the history, culture, and contributions of Black Americans has historically been intentionally omitted or deleted from the study of American history, and such omission or deletion continues to the present day in many American states and local jurisdictions. And whereas National Black History Month recognizes and pays tribute to the contributions that Black Americans have made to American history by their struggles for freedom and equality, which have deepened our understanding of how intertwined are the destinies of all Americans. And whereas historian Carter G. Woodson, called the father of Black history, in 1926 organized historians and others to designate a time to promote and educate people about Black history and culture as a critical component of the advancement of Blacks in America. And whereas Dr. Carter G. Woodson designated the second week of February as Negro History Week and galvanized fellow historians through the Association for the Study of Negro History and Life, which he founded in 1915, now called the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, to encourage the teaching of Black history in the public schools. And whereas, as the idea of a time to study the history of Black people grew in acceptance in the 1960s, it evolved in what is now Black History Month and was increasingly celebrated in communities, colleges, and universities in America. And whereas, 50 years after the first celebrations, President Gerald Ford officially recognized Black History Month, appropriately during the country's 1976 bicentennial celebrations of the Declaration of Independence, a document that included the iconic and historically powerful words, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal." And whereas President Ford in his proclamation establishing Black History Month in 1976 called upon the public to seize the opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history. And whereas 40 years after President Ford officially recognized Black History Month, President Barack Obama, the nation's first Black president, delivered his proclamation on Black History Month from the White House, which was ironically built by enslaved skilled workers. And whereas President Obama's proclamation reminded Americans that our responsibility as citizens is to address the inequalities and injustices that linger, and we must secure our birthright freedoms for all people. As we mark the 40th year of National African American History Month, let us reflect on the sacrifices and contributions made by generations of African Americans, and let us resolve to continue our march toward a day when every person knows the inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And whereas on January 31st, 2023, President Joseph Biden proclaimed the month of February in the year 2023 to be National Black History Month in the United States, and stated that during National Black History Month, we celebrate the legacy of Black Americans whose power to lead, to overcome, and to expand the meaning and practice of American democracy has helped our nation become a more fair and just society. This country was established upon the profound but simple idea that all people are created equal and should be treated equally throughout their lives. And whereas each February, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History designates a new theme for Black History Month in keeping with the practice of Carter G. Woodson. And whereas the year 2023 has been given the theme of Black resistance, to explore how African Americans have resisted historic and ongoing oppression in all forms, and to reflect on African Americans' fights against historic and ongoing oppressions. And whereas the town of Brookline was an important base for the organized resistance to slavery by Black and white abolitionists and others, and a sanctuary for people escaping from enslavement during the era of slavery. And whereas, in addition to resistance to slavery, slavery included enslaved people who lived in Brookline and the slave trade, which are also a part of our history. And both histories are hereby acknowledged by the Select Board. And whereas, in his proclamation, Joseph Biden called upon public officials, educators, librarians, and all the people of the United States to observe this month with relevant programs, ceremonies, and activities. It's long. Now, therefore, the Select Board of the Town of Brookline, Massachusetts hereby proclaims that National Black History Month shall be celebrated during the month of February in Brookline. In furtherance of this proclamation, the Brookline Select Board hereby, 1, urges town departments and other local governmental and non-governmental bodies to develop programs, ceremonies, and activities to recognize and celebrate National Black History Month as appropriate to their missions. 2, urges residents, visitors, and people passing through Brookline to use the month of February to start a year-round process to study, learn about, and reflect on the history, culture, and contributions of Black people in America, whether American-born, foreign-born citizens, or immigrants to America. Number 3, urges residents, visitors, and people passing through Brookline to take advantage of the many programs being produced for National Black History Month in Brookline and in the surrounding metropolitan area, including those programs listed or linked to on the pages of the Brookline Public Library, the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Community Relations, the Public Schools of Brookline, and the Brookline Select Board. And finally, 4, urges people to use National Black History Month as an opportunity to study the creative and intellectual contributions of African Americans in the Boston area, such as the Embrace sculpture commemorating Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King's embrace at the Nobel Prize ceremonies in Sweden. Brookline artist John Wilson's maquette bust of Martin Luther King on the first floor of Brookline's Town Hall, and exhibitions, performances, and lectures on African American history, literature, and art at local museums, universities, and concert halls, particularly those about those African Americans who lived in Brookline, such as Roland Hayes, the singer, Harlem Renaissance writers Loretta Ruffin Ridley and Merida Bonner, the latter who was a student at Brookline High School and wrote for the Brookline High School newspaper, The Sagamore. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that was long, it's more than 3 minutes, I think, right, Devin? Okay, well, I read it in the total proclamation because I think it's important for people to know the history of this month and what we can and should use this month to do. And that is to learn more about not just Black history, but the history of America as truly it existed. So with that, we'll move on to the voting on it. Okay.
Yeah.
I move approval of the foreread proclamation recognizing National Black History Month. All in favor? Mr. Vanskoya,
Aye.
Ms. Ashkenazi.
Aye, and I have to leave, but I'll be back for a few other votes if I need to be. Bye.
Well, thank you, Mary. Okay. Mr. Sandman,
Aye.
and chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hmm. Take care.
Okay, next is the MBTA Communities Resolution. Let me introduce this, and I hope other board members have a few words to say about it also. We're going to have a discussion and possible vote on a resolution regarding form-based zoning along the Harvard Street corridor that was precipitated by last week's discussion and the concerns we've been hearing from the community. I don't think anyone disagrees that for Brookline, the important issues that MBTA Communities Act cannot be allowed to undermine are preserving commercial spaces and buildings in our commercial districts, elderly housing, affordable housing for low and middle income families and individuals, parking issues, and preservation of existing moderately priced rental buildings. The resolution attempts to address these issues by giving guidance to the planning department and supporting them by working with other and urging the town to work with other municipalities and municipal organizations to get the new governor to change DHCD's, that's Department of Housing and Community Development's, one size fits all guidance, as well as extend the deadline for towns like Brookline to comply. Without those changes, this can be a real bad situation for Brookline. In my opinion, the problem with the guidance is that it's based on a notion of how the market works that is a form of trickle-down economics. My opinion. If you build enough housing, even if luxury housing for the rich, lower housing prices will somehow trickle down to the masses in the long run. Of course, we all know what John Maynard Keynes said about the long run. If you don't know, it was in the long run, we're all dead. But it's ironic, also in my opinion, that both the left and the right wings of the political spectrum in Massachusetts seem to have bought into that notion. And from my point of view, what we're trying to do is to find ways to get around the breakdown of the market that has put us into this housing situation in Massachusetts and throughout the country, and finding ways to ensure that the MBTA Communities Act implementation does not undermine the values that we hold here in Brookline. It's going to be a hard job or hard task, but we have to do it. And I think we'll have some success, if not total success. So first, any other comments from the select board? Mr. Vance, John.
Thanks very much.
Bernard, I had my
and-
hand up as well.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Mike.
I go ahead,
Okay.
John, I just want to make sure
I'm sorry, I can't
called
tell
up.
whose hand is up first. So.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Well, a couple of things to say about this. First of all, I intend to vote for this resolution, and I'm glad that we have it in front of us tonight. And I'll be honest, I wasn't entirely happy with how things turned out last week because I felt as though there was something at stake, which this resolution somewhat captures, not entirely, but somewhat captures. And what was at stake that I was worried we were going to lose sight of last week was the question of local autonomy over zoning. And for me, what's left out of this resolution, understandably, because it's not really the point of this resolution, but hopefully will be incorporated in either our actions or in some future statement from the board. What's left out is that we need to also address the Department of Communities, excuse me, I'm going to get it wrong now, Housing and Community Development, there we go, at the state level, which in the minds of a lot of people, including the Massachusetts Municipal Association and others, has created a very flawed process and imposed that process on communities such as Brookline with no choice but to go along or to pay serious penalties in terms of impositions of fines that directly impact the housing neediest people in our community. Think about that for a second, that in the name of creating more housing and more affordable housing, we're going to have to bow to a directive from the state level as to how to do our zoning, or else the people who are supposed to benefit from the zoning change will be the ones who get punished. That strikes a lot of people as misguided policy. There are other aspects of what DCHD is requiring of us in this process that people would like to see fixed. And so I think in addition to this resolution, I hope that the next thing that we do at some point in the near future is figure out what we want to say to DCHD in terms of fixes that we would urge be delivered in what they have required of local communities, not just Brookline, but a number of local communities in terms of changes in their zoning that will accommodate dramatic increases in housing units. And we need increases in housing units in Brookline. We've been getting increases in housing units in Brookline, not at the pace that a lot of people would like to see. We have also put a lot of effort and resources and community engagement into creation of a housing production, an updated housing production plan, which is soon to be delivered to the select board. So I'll look forward with great interest to that housing production plan. And I would much rather be guided towards a future of additional housing in Brookline and additional affordable housing in Brookline by our own housing production plan, which emerges from our own grassroots processes, than in compliance with a very rushed process that has been imposed on us at the state level. I'll limit my comments to that.
Okay, Mike?
Thanks. I have just a couple of things to say. First of all, to people who are, residents who are concerned that this in some way changes the direction of what the planning department is going to be doing and what the consultant for the planning department is going to be doing in terms of form-based, a plan for form-based zoning along Harvard Street. It doesn't. The planning department staff was involved in redrafting what we started to work on that we started to work on last week, and last week we agreed that it wasn't fully baked. So the overall direction to the consultant is not changing. The second thing I would say is that I agree absolutely that there are significant problems with the legislation, or not so much with the legislation, but with the guidelines that that are designed to implement the legislation. And we need to work, as we said last week, with our state rep, or state reps, plural. We have 4 state representatives who represent pieces of Brookline. We need to work with them to impress upon DHCD that there are some things that need to be changed. Among them, the requirement that we not be able to mandate ground floor commercial, and that we not be able to mandate apartments, smaller apartments than family sized. And with those, if those two things can be changed, then I think we'll all be much more comfortable with the concept that we can create housing in Brookline that's substantially more affordable than what we have now. Thanks very much.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to say from the staff perspective, echoing Mike's comments that staff are supportive of this resolution and supportive too. I think we hear loud and clear the comments from the broader community about the questions on the timeline of this process, how it's going to go, what the input needs to be. And I think from our perspective, the select board has taken a wise decision in saying that there is direct oversight coming from the select board at all stages of this process, beginning with, as this resolution suggests, a presentation to the board next month, early on in this process, after the RFP is issued and closes, but before a lot of the substantive work that will happen over the spring and summer happens, to allow for this opportunity for these questions to be asked and aired out in public. Some of the questions that Mr. Rosenthal raised, for example, about the choice of site, the question about the overall impact of increased hypothetical density. All of those things are things that we as staff need to address with the community and take community input on. So we hear you loud and clear on this. As I said in the newsletter that went out last week, we do not intend for this process to be, and we are very, very cognizant of the fact that these kinds of discussions can often get very heated. And when they get heated, it can kind of devolve into essentialist camps. Either you're for it or you're against it. And the nuance of people's positions gets lost in the heat of that, particularly in this age of social media sound bites where people can just say, oh, you're a YIMBY or you're a NIMBY or, whatever. But we understand that the positions in this town are much more nuanced than that. And we respect everyone's positions on this. And that's the position that staff is taking going into this, is respect and open ears and open minds going into this process. So I would just encourage folks listening who are concerned about this to adopt that same position. And to the extent that you have questions or concerns, I am always happy to engage and discuss. I do think that it is important for us to proceed along many tracks here, demonstrate to the state that we are active participants in this process rather than obstructing it, while also pushing for changes by demonstrating that we are not operating in bad faith, but we are operating to reach the best possible outcome for the community and what the state wants, which is a more robust and diversified housing market in areas that are served by public transit. So with that in mind, I know staff are very intent on answering these questions, talking to the community, figuring out a process through which people can be heard. I do want to say that obviously we want to be talking with the same language and the same basis. So I want us to be careful and acknowledging to each other that we may not have complete information, and that if we are mistaken about something, that we have the courage to admit it. I have the courage. I am trying to do that as well. In fact, I noticed that in discussing with a colleague that I got the date of when this first came before the select board wrong. It was not in December of 2021. It was in April of 2022. That's my mistake. It won't be the last mistake I make. So I encourage you to call me out on that and tell me the realities of the situation. All of that is to say, we look forward to working collaboratively with the community to reach the best possible outcome here. I will say one final thing on this, which is the question that's often raised: is there an opportunity for what is the penalty if we don't comply with this? I will say what's been said to me in public and in private: that's breaking the law. So not only is that a potential reduction in $225,000 to BHA, there is a very real possibility, raising John's point, that someone could sue the town. And rather than simply holding the town in contempt, there is an outside chance that zoning ability could be taken away from us, that a special master could be appointed, and the zoning could be done totally out of our control. What is the chance of that? It's higher than zero. I'd say it's higher than 25%. I do think we underestimate sometimes the degree to which our visibility makes us a target for that kind of a lawsuit. So I really want us to work collaboratively with the state to avoid that outcome. So I want us to be partners in that regard. So that's all I have to say on the subject. Thank you.
Okay. What I'd like to do now is not read the whole resolution, but read the substantive parts of it, because I think it's important for people to understand what we're trying to do here. So without any objection, I'll proceed to read the resolved clauses. And it gives you a sense of what the next opportunity for public input will be, and what type of issues will be particularly on that type of agenda. So now therefore be it resolved that on or before March 21st, 2023, the department present at a public meeting of the select board a schedule of proposed dates for 1, community workshops, and 2, select board hearings before and after draft versions of a zoning bylaw are completed. And 2, that at the March 21st meeting, the department report on how the draft zoning could A, incentivize the creation and retention of mixed-use developments within the proposed district commensurate with its current character. B, disincentivize the demolition of existing rental units on Harvard Street. And C, maintain the town's inclusionary zoning standards for affordable housing. 3, that at the March 21st meeting, the department report on the relative constraints and benefits of parking minimums and maximums along Harvard Street. 4, that the department ensure its comprehensive planning process includes strategies to plan for infrastructure, including parks and schools, for example, due to external forces such as regional population and housing growth, known development plans, and potential changes in our built environment due to our zoning bylaw and state mandates, such as the MBTA Communities Act. So I just want to say that this is a resolution that was a result of the entire select board adding their thoughts to it, and then the planning department and town council adding their thoughts and restrictions. I don't think it's perfect, but it's a start, and it will be good to the extent that we bird dog it as a select board as we go through this process. And it's also important to note that this is a process that has to result in a warrant article at town meeting that will pass. So, yes, Mr. Van Scoya.
And I
I see that Mike has his hand up. You want to go first? You're muted.
Sorry, Bernard, that hand was left dangling. I apologize from last time. Yeah.
My only purpose was to make sure that people understood that the department referred to in the therefore is the Planning and Community Development Department, Brookline's. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a defined term in the recitals,
Yeah,
which I
right,
didn't read. So
right.
Good. Thank you for that. Okay, so unless there are any other discussion, I'd like to take a vote on this. Okay. Are you saying something, Mike? You're
I wonder
muted.
if you just let me text, give me a moment to text Miriam to tell her that we're going to, I know she wants to vote on this.
Okay.
Give her just a second to respond to that. You may, there we go. Here she is. Her response is coming.
Mhm.
Any second now. There we go. Okay, Bernard, thank you very much for waiting.
Okay, so all in favor of the resolution of the select board regarding the MBTA Communities Act, please indicate by saying aye. Mr. John,
Aye.
Miriam,
I with an asterisk, which is, I'm sorry, I missed this. But I just want to say, I don't think we need to tell two I.
Okay,
okay, not sure. Was that a caveat to your aye?
The message got a little garbled, Miriam.
Oh, thank you. For some reason, I can't start my video, but just I, yes.
Okay, thank you. Mike,
just I.
just, okay, and chair votes just I too. Okay, thank you. Next, school committee vacancy ballot language. Question of placing the position of school committee member for a term of 1 year to fill a vacancy on the ballot at the May 2nd, 2023 annual town meeting. Period.
Yeah. I'll just
okay.
So a school committee member Monopoly submitted her letter of resignation effective January 19th. Select board must notify the town clerk of the vacancy and instruct the vacant schools committee seat to be placed on the ballot in May. The candidate who's elected to the seat will then serve the remainder of the term, which is until 2024. So nomination papers for that seat for this May election will be available in the town clerk's office. The deadline to submit papers for that is March 14th. Now, any questions can be directed to the town clerk, Ben Kaufman, whose email is bkaufman@brooklinema.gov. B Kaufman@brooklinema.gov is the town clerk. I would note too, it's my understanding that the current position of the school committee is that the seat will remain vacant until the election. So there will be no need for a joint meeting to appoint a temporary candidate for the couple months between now and then.
Okay, do we, and we need to take a vote on that?
Right, you need to vote to put it on the ballot. Yep.
Okay. All in favor? John,
Aye.
is Miriam still here?
Don't think so.
No, but 3 of us will do it.
So Mike
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Okay. If I have the correct agenda here, the next item is going to be
Part the MWRA bond sale.
I don't have the right agenda. MWRA bonds. I think you gonna make a presentation for us to us?
Do it briefly. I don't have much, but good evening. Before you, I'm sorry. Thank you, Devin. So good evening.
Introduce yourself first.
I'm Lincoln Heineman. I'm the finance director for the town. Good evening. So just in a few sentences, what's before you is your consideration of $4 million in proposed 0% interest loans from the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority for the water and sewer division to replace water meters. So, and this authorization was approved by town meeting in 2 parts. It's $4 million total, $2 million at the May 2021 town meeting and $2 million at the annual town meeting last year in 2022. That's the substance of the debt request before the board, for the board to approve the actual, this actual approval of the bonds themselves. There are some documents, if the board does approve it, there are 2 documents in triplicate here in the select board's office that need signatures. So if the members of the board who are here in person, if it's approved by the board, could sign those tonight, that would be great. And then just briefly, if I could, on the horizon for upcoming debt at the end of March, it's currently planned for the March 21st select board meeting will be before you a general obligation debt issuance for mostly for debt that was authorized both at the May town meeting in 2022, and then some pieces that were authorized at the November town meeting this past year. So we are working with the town's financial advisors and the town's bond counsel to get those documents in order, to have them before the board in a timely fashion, and then to have them before the board for your consideration on May 21st. So happy to take any questions that the board has.
Any questions? John?
So I just want to be clear, this is a 0% interest loan.
That is correct.
Can the rest of us get the 0%?
If you're replacing water meters, maybe, but otherwise, no, I don't think so. From the,
Okay.
from the water MWRA, no.
And is that the usual terms of these kinds of loans?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Yes. From the MWRA. Yes.
Now, the loan is going to be used to replace water meters. Are those meters owned by the town?
I believe the answer to that is yes. I know Jay Hersey, the water sewer director, I believe is on the meeting remotely. So I'd like him to weigh in on that. I believe, as I said, I believe the answer is yes.
The reason why I ask is that there are tax covenants that speak to whether we can use the funds for private persons. And I'm sure that someone has resolved that question. I just want to, get some information myself.
Certainly.
Yes, hi, Chair Board Member Green. This is Jay Hersey, Director Water and Sewer, and yes, those meters will be purchased by the town and we'll maintain them.
And we'll own them, right?
Yes.
I have one other question on another issue. In the documents, there are a couple of places where we talk about equal employment opportunity. And I'd like to ask, I guess it's DPW or whoever, to give us an update on how the town is complying with the goals set in the documents for employment of minority and women contractors. Seems to be that this is an opportunity to really achieve those goals because of the type of project that we're talking about.
It is, yep, and that's a requirement of the contract that we're entering into with the MWRA. The construction contract to actually install the meters will have those stipulations in it, and those will need to be met.
Okay, yeah. So what I'm asking is that we get a report on that at some point.
Okay, yes.
Any other questions or?
Quick one.
Yes.
The question for Mr. Hersey, John Van Scoik from the Select Board, and thank you very much for all of the good work of the department. The answer was, I'm sure, correct that these are the town's meters, but just so that it's maybe better understood by the people at home, is it correct that these are the meters that the town would place at, the places of residence of all of the customers? Is that correct or not?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So this is essentially a swap out of all of the water meters in the system, or just some of the water meters in the system?
The majority.
The majority of them?
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's based on age.
Yeah. And so the MWRA loans us the money, 0% interest. And then we basically repay the loan by an increase in the rates to pay for the meters, right? Is that how it works?
Well, it's, indirectly, we have assessments that we pay the MWRA, but a lot of this money is coming through the state too. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? Let us vote. I move approval of the local, I'm sorry. I move approval of this debt. Is that good enough?
If I could suggest, it's just approval of the debt in the vote as specified in the packet.
Okay, I move approval of the debt, the MWRA, LWSAP, which is local water and sewer. What's the A stand for? Assistance program. The financial assistance agreement and loan agreement package as provided, and authorize the town administrator and the finance director, treasurer to sign and execute the agreement on behalf of the town. Okay. All in favor? John,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
And get that money. Okay, let me find my thing here. I have it.
Got it.
Next is local emergency planning committee slate and bylaws. Speaker Cheryl Snyder.
Good evening, Cheryl Ann Snyder, Emergency Management Coordinator in the Office of Emergency Management. I'm here tonight to discuss the reestablishment of the Brookline Local Emergency Planning Committee, or LEPC. The role of the Brookline LEPC is to plan and prepare for hazardous materials emergencies should they occur. In 1984, an extremely toxic chemical escaped from a chemical plant in Bhopal, India. Thousands died and many more were injured. Approximately 6 months later, a similar but smaller scale incident occurred in West Virginia. These two events raised concern about local preparedness for chemical emergencies and the availability of information on hazardous chemicals in a community. In response to these concerns, Congress passed the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act, also known as EPCRA, in 1986. EPCRA establishes requirements for federal, state, and local governments and industry regarding emergency planning and community right to know reporting on hazardous and toxic chemicals. The community right to know provisions help increase the public's knowledge and access to information on chemicals in individual facilities, their uses, and releases into the environment. States and communities working with facilities can use the information to improve chemical safety and protect public health and the environment. Fire Chief and Emergency Management Director John Sullivan reestablished the Brookline LEPC to comply with the federal EPCA requirement. Last year, the Office of Emergency Management received a small grant to hire a consultant to assist us with the process. At the initial Brookline LEPC meeting on December 5th, 2022, we reviewed and approved the bylaws. I'm here tonight to request the Select Board to approve the bylaws and slate for the Brookline LEPC.
Thank you. Any questions? Could you tell me what SARA stands for? It's an acronym in bylaws that is not defined.
You picked the one question I don't have at the tip of my fingers, but yes, it's related to EPCRA, and it's basically the law that requires it talks about the way that the industry or facilities need to report those chemicals to the state and local organizations. And so it's called Tier 2 reporting, which has been going on in the community for as it should be. However, we have not had an active LEPC for many years.
According to my searches, it stands for Superfund Amendments and Reauthorization Act.
Thank you.
Maybe it should be defined in the bylaws so that people like me don't ask.
Happy to make that correction.
And EPCRA also, the community right to know law. So hearing no further questions.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't know we were going forward. I did have a couple of other questions. So this committee actually was not in place during COVID, but it really would have nothing to do with COVID, right? It would only have to do with hazardous
EPCRA is specifically about hazardous chemicals
Yeah.
and making sure that the community is aware of what hazardous chemicals are in the community.
Mhm.
And if there is a release, making sure that the community is aware of that. Additionally, the LAPC is in charge of making sure that the emergency plans are in place and that training is happening and that all of the facilities that need to report are doing so.
I just want to say that this is very timely because I happen to have caught a news story today. I don't know whether you caught it. An entire community in Ohio had to be evacuated. You are aware of it.
Yes, the
And-
train accident.
And this involved a train that was carrying very, very hazardous materials. And it was a, you know, a very, very severe emergency that required urgent action to evacuate. And I know that people might say, yeah, but that's Ohio. That's, you know, some sort of a train that runs through the, you know, some small community. Probably people would be surprised to find out how many potential dangers there are in our communities that could result from releases of hazardous materials. And it makes me feel a little bit more secure knowing that we're re-implementing this. So I just want to say thank you to all of those who were involved in pulling this back together again. It's great.
Great, thank you.
Great. Now, as I understand, we're approving not only the bylaws, but the membership on the committee as well as 2 subcommittees.
Just the memberships on the committees
Okay.
or just the membership of the
Overall.
organization, the LEPC itself, not the subcommittees.
You want to talk about those members or?
I can tell you that they are a combination of people from both Brookline, the town of Brookline, various departments in the town of Brookline, as well as state and regional organizations. The MBTA is included, the MWRA is included, MEMA is included, and some federal organizations, including the EPA, are also involved.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Okay, so then therefore I'd like to move approval of the bylaws and slate members of the committee for the local emergency planning committee as presented by the Office of Emergency Management. So all those in favor, John,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, this will be exciting. Brookline Day update. You have something?
I believe Lee Jackson is going to speak to you on this
Okay.
matter.
Last year was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Of course, I enjoyed it at Lars Anderson Park too, but it was great to be in the middle of our commercial district, Brookline Day, and looking forward to
So,
it.
good evening, members of the board. My name is Lee Jackson. I'm the Recreation Director here in town, and I am joined by my colleague Meredith Mooney in planning. And I'm going to take the lead on a presentation tonight. The last time I was here in front of you, it was to ask you to approve a pilot for Brookline Day to take place in Coolidge Corner. So I'm going to share my screen now and run you through some information and an update. So bear with me as I start my slideshow. There we go. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Fantastic. So yes, last time I was with you, I believe it was back in April. I was coming before you to ask for your support to host in Coolidge Corner. And our staff really did see a successful event in Coolidge Corner, and we'd like to make it a permanent location. So we're very sensitive about the South Brookline residents and the fact that the event wouldn't be at Lars. And so we are planning on beefing up our programs on the south side of town. We are, in fact, adding community events at Robert T. Lynch Golf Course. We've always had our fall event there, but we are adding a spring event. and it's called Bloomin' and Movin'. It's going to be a fun spring event, but we'll also look to perhaps partner with other departments in town and poll South Brookline residents to see what they'd like to see at Lars moving forward. So we're going to offer some transportation to Brookline Day for 2023 at Coolidge Corner. This did come up last year, I believe, from one of the select board members, had a question for me about that. And at the time, we didn't have a reliable bus transportation outfit that we felt like we could count on. But this year we will find some form of transportation to get South Brookline residents up to Coolidge Corner. But I do want to walk you through some information and some of our successes. And then I'm going to pass it off to Meredith Mooney to add her insights as well. The estimated attendance from Brookline Day this past year, 2022, was 8,000 to 10,000 people. We typically saw at Lars Anderson 4,500. So as you can see, this is a big success for the town. We have, if you've been, you'll know that we have a large kind of inflatable area for the kids to play around. It's called our Kid Zone. And last year at Coolidge Corner, this zone was able to be kind of separated from the street part of the event. And it truly felt like we saw at least the same size in just the Kid Zone than what we would see at Lars Anderson. So the event really did become larger, much more engaging, and must have been in the exact right location for more folks to join us. We did give away all of our gear bags, as Bernard knows. We do lots of giveaways, including very cool sunglasses and giveaway bags. 1,000 bags are given away within 1 hour. Again, a mark of the success and the turnout for this event. The increased traffic was also recognized by the local businesses, and they remarked on that to me privately, and I believe publicly through letters to both myself and the planning department, and I believe maybe the select board. A little bit of reminder for you, this was just, I wanted to show you kind of the main stage and a little bit of who participated in Brookline Day 2022. As you can see here, we had on the main stage some of the favorites. I won't read them all, but Vanessa Train, very well known in Brookline, wonderful with kids. And she kicked off the main stage event. And we were able to add an element of wellness, as you know, as part of our mission at Brookline Recreation. So we were really proud of that. And as you can see here, this picture is on the wellness stage. And I believe this is the Coolidge Yoga doing grounding flow. Here we want to share with you that we did sell out all of our vendor tables. We had 90 vendors that we could take into this space, and we sold them out all the way. And we did have 100% attendance to all those vendors. So not only did they buy into the event, obviously, and want to show up as a business or nonprofit, they actually came to the event and stayed at the event the whole time. So we really saw a smooth execution of the vendor area at Coolidge Corner, and we wanted to make sure that you knew that. We saw, for instance, in Lars Anderson, we'd had 72 vendors, and here again, we sold out at 90. This is a real fun part of Brookline Day 2022 for me, especially with working on the equity initiative in recreation. We really wanted to weave through as a theme throughout everything we do. And so this was the first year we were able to offer an equity program at Brookline Day. So we want to thank Lee's Burgers, who gave away free hamburgers and free food to anyone in financial need. And the way that we did this was we handed out coupons with our partners over at the food pantry, teen center, senior center, and other locations, and really just had to get those coupons in people's hands who might need it. And so 122 coupons were collected by Lee's Burgers, and they were able to provide that food to really make sure that everyone could have the same experience at Brookline Day. And this was fun. I teamed up with Meredith, and she might comment a little bit on this. We wanted to do something fun for the business owners, and so we had a Spirit of Brookline Day program, and whoever could do the greatest window display, and we ran around and looked and checked everybody out and gave an award to recognize the business organization that best incorporated making a difference in Brookline. And it was a lot of fun. And I'll say that Wild Goose Chase was recognized as the winner of the window decorating contest. And Paris Creperie was recognized as the most spirited business at Brookline Day 2022. So our conclusions, we want to move to Coolidge Corner. We thought it brought a really unique opportunity for us to increase the effectiveness of our overall event for the town. It is the largest event that we do in Brookline. We were able to create a greener event because we moved to closer to the MBTA. And we're also in walking distance with a lot of residential complexes and multiple population centers. We provided a real accessible experience, we think, for the elderly and residents with mobility problems, because we were on a hard surface and paved surfaces. Those surfaces are easier to travel. And we found that to be a benefit that we should consider. The convenience and visibility for more local businesses and organizations. Meredith may talk a little bit about that, but that's what came out from the business perspective, is that it really did help get traffic into Coolidge Corner and into local businesses again, who were really terribly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. So we're proud of that. Additional space, because we were at Coolidge Corner, we did have additional space. We had dedicated event space, and we're able really to separate our event spaces out, which allowed more safe travel to different locations. For instance, you could go to the kids zone without having to go through lines for food, for instance, that we would often struggle with at Lars Anderson. So I really wanted to make sure to share this with you, and I'm gonna go through one more thing and probably hand it over to Meredith Mooney at this point, if she's still with us. Meredith?
Thank you, Lee.
Yes.
Meredith Mooney, Economic Development Director. Good evening. I really just wanted to underscore some points that I think you heard earlier in public comment from the Chamber and the Coolidge Corner Merchants Association representatives. The Recreation Department's decision to experiment with relocating Brookline Day to Coolidge Corner last year dovetailed incredibly nicely with a lot of the conversations the Economic Development Division has been having with our business community throughout COVID regarding, what resources do Brookline small business community and do our commercial areas need to not only, bounce back from the ongoing economic impacts of the pandemic, but also to, set themselves up for success and continue to be competitive, relevant, and thriving going forward. And regular public events and programming that will draw people into the commercial areas, create the additional foot traffic, and give people reasons to stay in our commercial areas for longer and hopefully patronize more businesses is very high on that priority list from the business community's perspective. So our business community, our business organizations were very encouraged and energized to find out that Recreation had made a decision to experiment with Brookline's signature community event, Brookline Day, in Coolidge Corner, our largest commercial area. The Recreation Department did a great job of really bringing the business community into the event planning process early on to ensure that they're getting the feedback, perspective, insights from the businesses on the ground to ensure that Recreation was planning a successful new format in Coolidge Corner. And as you have heard in this presentation, as you heard earlier from the business community representatives, it was very successful, excellent attendance and participation. And I've heard from the business organizations that they're very excited about continuing to work collaboratively with the town, with the Recreation Department, in order to make, build off of the success that we had in 2022 and in September 2023.
Thank you so much, Meredith. And it was a lot of fun working with you and the planning department. And I'll have to say that we're thankful to make sure that the board knows that the Recreation Department is really honored to plan this event for the town. And we're thankful for Meredith Mooney's help specifically. And also we could not do it without DPW. They've been amazing on all of our planning meetings, and police and fire. It is really quite a complex event to pull off. And as you can imagine, everyone stepped up and everyone really did their part, including the business community and the residents, and they showed up. and it was just an awful lot of fun. We look forward to doing it again. I wanted to make sure that I thanked Josh Cook, who is our recreation leader, and he's our event lead. And he spent numerous amounts of hours and hours planning this event, and really just grabbed the bull by the horn, so to speak, and was interested and creative, and we made it happen together. So we're grateful to have the opportunity to work with you in the town on 2023. And I just, I want to say September 10th, 2023 in Coolidge Corner. And that is my presentation for you tonight. I'll take any questions that you might have.
Okay, any questions from the board?
Quick comment.
Yes, John.
This is, excuse me, more in the order of flattery and compliments than questions. Devin's going to put something up. Thank you so much, Devin. Oh, I'm amazed I could get that up on the screen. Thanks to Devin. So this is the line from Brookline Day at Coolidge Corner. Just for children to be able to sit, behind the wheel of a fire engine. And I thought, wow, that's great. And there was an equally long line to sit at the wheel of one of the DPW plow trucks. So that was just like one piece of the evidence of how successful this event was. And I will confess, it felt to me like the select board was taking a little bit of a risk by, messing around with something that had been a real big success at Lars Anderson for many, many years. And I know there were people from South Brookline who were justifiably disappointed at the change. But so I showed up early on the day of the event, sort of with holding my breath and worrying that I'd be the only one there, or, whatever. Boy, did our people come through. And the Babcock Street parking lot was full. There were people in the middle of Harvard Street, all the way up and down from, way down near, let's say Coolidge Street to all the way up to, to Beacon Street. And everybody was having a great time. Everybody was having a great time. The only thing maybe some of us got too much sun that day. So just, guarantee us more sun again. Because that was part of what made it so great.
Right now.
Write that down. Yeah, more sun. So thank you, Lee. Thank you, Aaron Galentine. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chamber of Commerce, who pulled this together, and promise to South Brookline, to the extent that we can make such promises. As Lee said in her presentation, there will be events planned to try to recognize that we want to have just as much fun at Lars Anderson Park as well. So, and the golf course. So I'm really glad to hear that mention of those two things by Lee.
Thank you.
That's it. No questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I second what John said. It was a great evening. It was a great day. The weather was great, so we lucked out there. And all town departments, from DPW to recreation to police to fire. I mean, everyone chipped in and made this an incredible experience. So Mike, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, that was a blast. The whole thing was a blast. It was a wonderful piece of organization, Lee, and it came off very, very well. And I'm sure that it helped the commercial establishment in the Coolidge Corner. Thank you.
Let's get 12,000 this year. I think it was 8 to 10, so I'm going for 12, and just another great experience for everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stanley.
My daughter, age 3, says she would like more face painting next year.
Oh, that's right. Your daughter.
Oh, you got it. Yeah, that was very successful. And I think you're right about that. I think she's right about that.
You introduced her to your new position with quite a bang.
Yes.
Wow, Daddy, I like this job.
Right. I couldn't use it to cut the line at the fire engine. So she was not impressed.
Okay, we don't have to vote on this, but thank you for that presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for what you're doing in last year, or what you did last year, and what we're expecting.
What we're about to do again.
2023. Okay.
We'll raise the bar for us all. So thank you so much. I hope you have a good evening.
Okay, next on the agenda, Health Department marijuana study update. This is also just a report. We don't have to.
I actually think, sorry, you've got the civilian complaint policy next.
Okay, I guess I have my agenda screwed up. Okay, so civilian. Let me get this straight. Civilian complaint policy. We have Judith Fabricant and Jen Pastor and Michael Downey to present on this.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Judy Fabricant. I'm Chair of the Police Commissioners Advisory Committee. You have in front of you a document. I know you have it available. It's in what you have is in red line form so that you can see the changes from the existing policy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be very brief. I'm just going to explain what this is and a little bit of the background, and then I'll turn to Acting Chief Jennifer Pastor for her to just tell us the police department's position on this. You will recall that back in August, the committee brought before you its assessment of the police department complaint procedure, and we did that pursuant to the charge to our committee, the charge that this board has given to our committee that directs us to produce a biannual assessment of the police complaint procedure. And so we did that. We produced that report. We submitted that report to you. I believe it was August 24th for your approval, and you voted to approve it. Our assessment made some recommendations as to changes in the procedure. And so after you approved the report, we then turned to the task of drafting the specific language of the changes to implement the recommendations we had made. And the person who took the laboring oar on that was Deputy Superintendent Paul Campbell of the police department. He and I worked together on that. We brought that back to the Police Commissioners Advisory Committee, which approved those changes at our meeting in November. So the document you have before you is a red line version so that you can see the changes that shows the existing police department, the portion of the policy manual that has the complaint procedure, and then in red line, it shows you the changes that we propose. So that has been approved by our committee, and we now ask that you approve it. And of course, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. I want to point out the two things that I think are the most significant proposed changes. One is something that comes directly from the charge that this board gave to the Police Commissioners Advisory Committee, and that is language that says that aside from all the various other ways that a civilian can make a complaint, in addition, a civilian can make a complaint to our committee directly. And that is, as I said, in the charge that this board gave to our committee. My understanding is that the reason for that is there may be people who are not comfortable bringing a complaint to the police department and want another route. And so we provide another route. So there's that provision. And then the other provision that I think is particularly important is at paragraph 4V. And this provision says that the monthly report that the police department provides to this board regarding complaints received and investigated during that month should also be provided to our committee in a redacted form with confidential information redacted. And I think that's especially important because that enables our committee to do the job you've given us to provide oversight, among other things, for the process of investigations and evaluation of complaints. So those are the two particular points that I would point out to you. If there are other aspects of the changes you'd like to ask questions about, I'd be happy to hear any questions. Otherwise, I'll ask Acting Chief Jennifer Pastor to express the police department's view on this document.
Sure thing. And I don't have too much more to add other than to express sincere gratitude and thanks to Judge Fabricant, to the PCAC, and to Deputy Campbell for their hard work. on making these changes. And for all the work I know they'll continue to do moving forward.
Okay, thank you. So, any questions? I have a few comments.
I do have one
Mike?
comment. Yeah, I thought, first of all, I read all through that. I really appreciate the red line copy. That was very helpful. Very helpful. And the one thing I would say is there's one thing that you folks missed. There are a number of places where it says he/her or him/she/she/ whatever. That should be changed to they. And we actually passed a bylaw talking about inclusive language that suggested that. So I would appreciate it if you would. I'm perfectly happy to endorse this, vote for it if that's what we're going to do with that. But I would appreciate if you'd make that change.
Yep.
So I'm sorry, go ahead, Chief.
No.
So I just wanted to ask if we can find another way to make the language inclusive, such as referring back to the noun rather than using a pronoun at all. Would that meet your concern? I have to tell you that I may be the only person on earth left who feels this way, but I find they confusing when it refers to a single person. But I take your point about he, she.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you can do that, they is just so much simpler. And I think if you come back in 25 years, you'll find that people are using it much more commonly.
I can say I'm happy to take on that responsibility of incorporating the gender inclusive language. That won't be a problem.
Thank you.
So I think we can vote on this subject to Mike's comments, but also I have a number of comments that I'd like to have incorporated at some point, assuming people agree with them. Do you have anything to say, John?
I just, if it's okay, I'd like to just ask a couple of questions for the sake of clarification. This is a very, very detailed policy. It goes on for 34 pages and it goes into many, many, many specifics. And that's understandable because we're dealing here with procedures that will affect the impact, both not only the complainant's rights, but equally important, the rights of the employed officers of the police department to a process that respects their contract and respects their rights. So that's not my issue. My only issue is how do we interface to the public in a way that is much simpler and takes what is this policy and presents to the public a very clear explanation of how they can, if they choose to do so, if they have reason to do so, file a complaint. And I assume we already have that in place. So I'm just looking for some reassurance here that we've figured out a way that average members of the public don't have to read this entire policy to understand what their rights are as members of the public if they have reason to complain about any individual in the police department.
So I think Chief Pastor may have more to say about this, but there is a brochure that the police department publishes. It's on the website. My understanding is that it's available to be handed out at police stations that I think does what you're looking for. Chief Pastor?
Exactly what I was going to say. We will need to update the website and that brochure to include the option of reporting to the PCAC any alleged misconduct, but that's not too big of a task for us to handle in short order.
And my understanding is, according to the policy here, that update will be presented to the select board for approval. So let's make sure that doesn't fall through the cracks.
You're talking about the update to the brochure.
Right.
Right. So once we update the policy, I think the brochure will just be reflective of the new of that addition to the policy, which I think we're voting on this evening.
Right. Any other comments before I mention a few things myself? Okay, so I have a few comments that will not impede our ability to vote this tonight. I do want to just get them out there so that eventually they can be fixed. First of all, I think our office needs to set up some procedures for what happens when a complaint comes to the select board office, right? Like who gets it, what's done with it, and how it gets to the select board. Either notice that the complaint's here, or full copy of the complaint, or whatever is appropriate. But that was one thing that's missing in the policy, although it probably doesn't need to be in the policy, but it's something that we need to do. I'd like to suggest that the PCAC talk about an issue that's raised in the policy, and that is whether the IAO officer should be a deputy superintendent so that he's not in civil service. I don't have a position on that, but I think that's one of the questions that was raised during the discussions of the PCAC last year. On page 10, one thing that seems to be actually important, although it looks small, is whether a complaint can be found to be both unfounded in part and sustained in part. I thought that there was some discussion of that during our earlier discussions about PCAC. There's on page 15, it talks about an appeal to the select board unless otherwise specified by civil service laws. And I guess my question is, shouldn't we also add or union contract? I assume that probably should be added, but I don't know. And then on page 19 at the very top, you need to change Human Relations Youth Services Commission to the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Community Relations Commission.
Bernard, if you're reading from notes, would you do me the favor of sending me those page references in an email so that I can make sure
I'll do that later on tonight.
Thank you so much.
Let's see, and finally, this is just me and maybe the way I think about things. The discussion of the post commission, beginning on page 25, looks like it's a summary that was provided to us by the post commission, summary of the law. In any event, I think it'd be helpful to just indicate that, if it was, to indicate that that is a summary provided by the state, or that it's a summary that we produce, so that it's clear that you're talking about what the law says as opposed to actual procedures of the complaint process.
So I believe the answer to that is that it's taken straight from the post commission. Certainly our committee didn't come up with it. Chief Pastor, do you share that understanding?
That was my understanding, but I can take a look and just make sure when you compare them that they are identical and matched up.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure that people are clear that this is a separate part of the policy that is coming from the post commission. So those are my only comments, and I will put them on paper and send them to you.
Thank you so much.
We do have one question in the chat from a participant. Bonnie Bastian asks, what community outreach will happen to make people aware of the complaint process?
You want to answer it, Judy?
So I would be inclined to think I know that the police department already does some community outreach in the form of the webpage and the brochure. The committee, our committee, has an open meeting every month, and we take public comments at the beginning of every meeting and after every agenda item. But certainly there is room for more. And I'll just interrupt myself here for just a second to make sure that people are also aware that we have a public feedback survey process that is available on our webpage and on the police department's webpage for feedback that is not in the form of a formal complaint or commendation. We keep track of that feedback and we have a report on it every month that is made public, that is part of the materials for our meeting every month. So that's available. So beyond that, I think there certainly is room for more publicity about the complaint process and how complaints can be made. I think that's something for us to have further discussion with the police department about how that might be done. And if the commenter has ideas about how that might be done, we're certainly open to that.
Yeah. By the way, the select board also receives a summary of those complaints or commendations. It's very, very helpful because most of the complaints are things like rudeness or just not real misbehavior, but just the type of personality issues that are easily and quickly corrected once the police chief is made aware of them and can talk to the officer and say, just don't do that. In terms of getting the word out to a broader audience, I mean, one thing that I would suggest is that you talk to the Diversity Commission because, they have a different constituency than the PCAC and the police department, and maybe they could serve to get the information on the existence of the complaint policy out to a broader group of people. I think they do some of that now, but maybe that can be sort of increased. And not just the commission, but also the diversity office. So, any other comments, thoughts, any other questions? There are no questions from our vast audience. I'm surprised. Okay, so unless there are any other questions from the select board, I'd like to vote.
Oh, Bernard, I just want to read into the record that there's a comment in the Q&A from Marty Rosenthal that reads, police complaints, Bernard Green's comment, intake, the diversity office liaison role, as per my comment, is still absent and part of that.
I've just checked with Miriam and she's okay with us voting on this. So without her.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let me see what my language is here. I move approval of the revisions to the town civilian complaint policy as recommended by the Police Commissioners Advisory Committee. Not subject to, but acknowledging that there will be additional changes to that policy in response to select board members' comments. So all those in favor, John?
Aye.
Mike? It looked like an aye.
You're on mute, Mike.
Okay.
A mute aye.
Okay. And Miriam's not on, I take it. Yeah. Okay, and
Right,
chair
right.
votes aye. Thank you, Judge Fabricant, Chief Pastor, and I guess those are the two people speaking. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, Health Department marijuana study update. Sigali Reese is going to make a presentation to the select board.
Hi, good evening. Scholars Director of Public Health and Human Services. Thanks for having me tonight. Were we able to get the slides, or I can share my screen? What's the best way to do that?
You can share your screen unless you need me to.
Nope, I can do that. Thank you. Great. Like I said, thanks for having me tonight. Just here to provide an update on the marijuana research study. As a reminder, in the fall town meeting of 21, petitioners put forth a warrant article 9, with the goal of establishing a study committee to look at the very topics pertaining to marijuana and its impact to the town. Town meeting did not pass, but opted to refer to ACPH Advisory Council on Public Health, and you can see the language there. So the goals of our study are understand the definition and relative the impacts of marijuana and other substances in the town of Brookline, with a particular focus on use rates. And we'll get into looking at the data around use and what we have available. And also to identify priorities to address health disparities and establish intervention strategies. And again, we'll talk about that in the few slides coming, but really focused on action items at the end of the report and programs are, that the department can implement to actually affect change. So I do want to stress that it is a research study, so we're following research study process. We're looking at a very available secondary data, any data out there that already exists. There's a lot of literature that we're going to be reviewing, and I'll have a summary of that coming up. Primary data, I think this is very important. We want to make sure our research study is focused on Brookline. So looking at conducting interviews and focus groups with key stakeholders. And then at the end, like I stated, I want to make sure that we look at the data, but also have recommendations for us to take action on. And throughout that process, making sure we are working on community engagement throughout all these steps and talking to the community to make sure it's Brookline focused. And to help us with that, we have developed a steering committee. So just to follow that flow, looking at our secondary data review, these are some examples. So looking at characterizing the demographics and disparities, and also looking at risk factors and protective factors such as usage and access, understanding social norms and attitudes, and the knowledge in the community around marijuana and substance use, and harms, benefits, and impacts. And then you'll see examples of the type of data that we're looking at and the sources there also. A lot of literature is out there about this, about community impacts of marijuana, and this is just a list of the types of literature review we will be doing. And again, really want to focus on the primary data collection because this is where we'll be engaging the most with the community. So that's with interviews and focus groups. So looking to gather insights on protective factors specific to Brookline and perceptions, and also allows us to build relationships and get community buy-in and really engage with stakeholders on those prevention strategies. The interviews and focus groups will also be informative as we develop those recommendations specifically for Brookline. So just to again summarize the steps, we have the data analysis, the synthesis, the development of the report, and then the review and dissemination, which I will probably be back here to share the information of that. I wanted to characterize the steering committee for you. They're community members. We were really fortunate to get some great volunteers from the teen center. We have several parent volunteers. We have school staff involved. The Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations has been very integral in the process. We have 2 student peer leaders. Obviously, the student voices are so important to us on a study like this. And we also have industry involved, law enforcement, and 2 members of ACPH as representatives. And then we also obviously have staff involved in the process too. The roles of the steering committee are to really help us be that pathway into the community. That's why we want to make sure to engage with various stakeholders. So interviews, focus groups, providing suggestions and connections to interviews in the community to identify stakeholders, recommendations on additional data sources, providing feedback, which we hope to have soon on preliminary data results, and then also, again, that 2-way street to help us disseminate the information, not only gather it, but help us bring it out to those stakeholders too. And here is a list of general stakeholders. So we have the steering committee, but then we talk about those interviews and focus groups. We want to make sure that we're hitting all of these buckets and really getting information from the various stakeholders, such as healthcare and mental health, existing nonprofits and faith-based organizations, obviously a strong connection with the schools. We put up connections with colleges and universities because we also want to capture data around young adult use, under 21 use. And then looking at government agencies, the health department, but also public safety, industry, when we're engaging and talking about their impacts on the community, it's really important to have their voice reflected in as a stakeholder. And obviously advocacy and parents, very important also. And then just to outline where we are in the process, we kicked it off in September. We've already done the data collection and literature review with our consultants. I should say we are working with Health Resources in Action, who have been amazing to work with, and we're excited to continue our work with them. And right now we are starting the primary data collection. So they are out in the community doing those focus groups and stakeholder interviews. And we hope by July to have the final report. And like I said, I hope to come back and share that with you. I welcome any questions.
Okay, any questions from the board?
I could throw. Sigal, thank you so much. And I had a chance to go through the slides prior to the meeting, and this really does look like exactly what people were hoping we would get from the study. So thank you for the very clear way that you've laid out what is going to be covered and the process you're going to follow. The question I have is, as you see it, will it be possible, based on this effort, to continue on an ongoing basis to, in a sense, sort of have a dashboard of vital statistics, that involves monitoring of the trends of use, not just of marijuana, but alcohol and other substances. Obviously, pills and so on is also an issue. Would it be possible, do you think, in the future for the health department to maintain that on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, I think looking at available data and some of the survey data captured in the community and how to display that better to communicate about important public health initiatives and understand the data and the trends is something I would love to do more of. We were able to do it around COVID because of the funding and some short-term staffing and having epidemiologists on staff to do that work. But I do agree that that's an important public communication tool that we have around public health to share and do data dashboards. I would say with some of our round one ARPA requests, we did get some approval for some software. And so we are in the process of purchasing that now, which I think will allow us to better display data. And I think we have some really valuable data in the youth risk behavior survey, which was one of those data sets, in the slides, and looking at trends across time and see what's going up and what's going down and where we should allocate our resources to increase those protective factors and decrease the risk factors, depending on where the data is pointing to.
Thank you very much.
Mike, do you have any questions? No, I'd like to second John's comments that the research plan that you laid out there looks like it's going to result in something that will be very, very helpful to us as we struggle with how we make sure that the legalization of marijuana is as harmless as possible. So appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else?
The appointments.
Yep, no, okay. Let me try to get to. Okay, so we have one appointment, correct? Just to the process committee.
Correct.
Okay. Let me see your.
Sure.
So we're going to move to appoint Mark Cirillo to the Planning Process Study Committee. Is there any questions about that? Select Board?
Just one question. I think don't we also have to appoint him to the planning board? His term has.
No, that's going to be.
No?
I think the discussion among staff was that we will, the planning board currently, we wait till the after the election. Because then there'll be 2 vacancies and you can, and then
Oh,
the
okay.
select board can appoint both at the same time.
So nothing urgent about validating his continued service on the planning board?
No, that's my note.
Okay.
Okay. So
This is Miriam. Can I just clarify? We're voting on making him a liaison and holding off on putting him on the planning board again until May, correct?
But he's already on the planning board.
His term's expiring.
When does this term expire?
His term has technically expired, but he can continue serving until you appoint someone new or he is reappointed. So it doesn't stop him from participating in the meeting, taking votes, all of that.
Okay. Okay, so moving on. I move to appoint Mark Zarilla to the Planning Process Study Committee. All those in favor? John?
Aye.
Miriam, are you still here?
Aye. Yes, I came here just for this vote. Aye.
Good. Mike?
Aye.
And chair votes aye.
That's all.
Okay, seeing no further business, I think we can close the meeting.
All right, Bernard. Nice work.
Thank you.
Yes, well done, Chair.
Okay.
Can-
Back.
It's been fun.
Is it permissible to ask Mike a question before we go? Are you anywhere near the Super Bowl location? out
Phoenix?
there?
Phoenix Super? No, it's, well, it's
Glen,
maybe-
isn't it Glendale or something like that? I don't know.
I was
but,
in Glendale? I thought it was in Phoenix.
All right, I'm leaving. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
The answer is a lot closer to Glendale than Phoenix,
Okay.
but no
Now-
tickets.
Now,
Sorry.
now I've disclosed your location.
No ticket. Borrego Springs, California.
All right.
We all
Google
here?
it.
Noted.
Okay, let's get off the air.
Okay.
Just say good night.
Night.
Good night, everybody.